Hello, Culture Matters podcast. I'm excited to introduce you to our guest. Before I do that, here's a quote just for this episode. The fact that three-fifths of an octopus's neurons are not in their brain, but in their arms, suggests that each arm has a mind of its own. Cy Montgomery, our guest today.
So
in
fit.
Our guest today is a great friend of the Culture Matters podcast, someone had the great opportunity and honor of serving for years now. If you don't know the Culture Matters podcast, they've actually, well, first of all, well, that's a problem. If this is your first time listening, type in their name, the one and only Christopher Vester on the Culture Matters podcast, and you'll see they're a regular on the show. Investor family has been in business for decades and decades, been successful in numerous ventures from farming to insurance to, of course, the automotive enterprises from the automotive auto group here down in North Carolina for decades. And Chris Vester, a regular of the show, has been a steward of learning and development and leadership, and someone that I'm very proud to call a friend. Today, we're going to talk about Align Your Nine, a program that actually both entrepreneurs, executives, people wanting to better themselves and their families and their businesses actually participate in with Chris and his family to align their nine. I'm going to learn a bit more of this, the journey and the philosophy and the actual teachings behind this. So thanks for coming. And of course, I should say more. Chris is a steward of his faith, and that's one of the things that I admire about you as well. So thanks for coming back on the Culture Matters podcast.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate that. Really indulgent introduction. I appreciate it a lot. Thank you, sir. And you are super important to me, and I hope you know that. And my family, not just me, but my family loves you. We're always excited when you're in town to be able to spend some time with you individually. And yeah, you've been massive help to us. I appreciate it.
And thanks for aligning your nine. So in that spirit, right, where would you say that the journey started for you, thinking and feeling around aligning your nine? Where did that journey start for you?
That's a great question, Jay. I think getting super specific about it probably was 2021, so not that long ago, being specific about it. But the journey of understanding um, the idea of there's these sections of your life that have to operate in integrity um, for you to move forward. And I'll call that a journey of like self-awareness. I think is where it started. And that was probably 2015 for me. So almost 10 years ago. My octopus tattoo actually is 2018. So I got so drawn into this idea of, nine very essential brain activities in how we live our life that I decided to get a tattoo honoring that. So it allows me to tell that story of why it's important to me. But the idea of like understanding what areas specifically, what compartments, I'll call them compartments of life, um, do you have to get in alignment, living with integrity in all of them? They have to be like the same everywhere you go. They can't be, one can't show up more than another in one area. And then seeing how that's drastically shifted my walk, every walk. Like it's my business walk, my walk with my family, walk in the business, the idea, like I just said, of self-reflection and self-awareness. Um, all of that, I believe, can be boiled down to nine things.
What are the nine?
So four of them are individual. Four of them are all about the foundation of just who we are. And for simplicity, it's body, soul, mind, and spirit. And I've seen a lot of people try to jump into affecting those around them, both in their business, in their community, in their family, and not have body, soul, mind, spirit integrated, developed. And I think I say that's the first place you can look for a lack of self awareness, of not understanding that they're not there where they need to be for spillover to happen. When those four areas get healthy, there's this natural spillover to the other areas, um, which is as a spouse, as a parent, as a worker, and as a steward of resources. Like it's those things. And
Yeah,
then,
I just want to, can I put out a word, a thought
sure,
picture
sure,
to maybe that, so like if I body, because I drew it out like body is a square, spirit's a square, soul's a square, mind's a square. So would an example be someone listening is uh, physically not where they would like to be? That would be one check.
yes,
Spiritual, their belief is unbelief.
right.
Mind, cynical, uh, negative, regressive.
Mhm.
Soul, uh, hypocritical.
Yeah,
Like I'm just trying to, or
yeah, sure. I
you
can
know,
help you. I can help
versus
walk that.
like if so, I have a six pack, also unbelief, cynical, hypocritical. I'm still not checking those
You're
boxes, but
still not
I
checking.
have a six pack. So,
Hey,
or I, so you
and
could take it.
there's some gurus in the world that say, hey, you can't be successful without one. But I don't believe you can be successful with one if the other three
Shoot,
things
I might
align.
have to actually believe that if my mind is bad, if my hypocrisy is there, if my spirit is broken.
Yeah,
So yeah, it just like some example so the audience can conceptualize this. That was the first thing that popped in my mind was like, where's my health? Where's my spirit? Where's my mind? Where's my soul? What does that even mean?
yeah,
That sounds scary.
yeah. So it's for me. You said it in the beginning as being a, a student of my faith. Like that's everything for me boils down to that. So the first thing that I always work on is what does their spiritual life look like? How are they individually growing in their relationship with God? Like that's first and foremost, right? If there's four squares, and I think that's a great analogy, right? Um, to say, hey, is this like where is that space? How are you developing that relationship? Not developing your religion, not developing a knowledge of even let's say the Bible, but a relationship with your creator. And most people, most guys that I've worked with in this situation, like that's an easy thing for them to check the box on because they can just say, like they can say, yeah, I understand that I am nothing without my creator. Like that's they're believers. Okay, well, then there's this idea is once that's the case, once you can say yes to that, then how are you transforming? There's a call of transformation after the call of salvation. And that transformation is the thing where people miss it a lot. I'm called to be transformed and maintain my health, right? I'm called to transform and develop soul relationships. So this relationship you and I have, like soul relationships are that a lot of people have a hard time with separation of spirit and soul. Okay. Spirit is your relationship with God. Soul is my relationship with other people here. Like mine and your relationship is a soul relationship. And bringing in those soul relationships that are going to be number one, help hold you accountable and keep you healthy. Um, and then for mind, it's we metabolize what we consume, and not that doesn't just mean with what we eat for breakfast, lunch, and dinner. It's what are we consuming with our eyes, our mind, our ears. What's the information we're putting in there? Garbage in, garbage out. And starting to say, okay, how can I become a better student in developing my mind to think bigger and better? Specifically, I think in the area that you feel the least educated in. One of my things, Suzanne and I actually had this conversation yesterday, is she feels like there's been things where she has been a beneficiary of my um, curiosity, like this unquenchable curiosity. And most of my curiosity leans towards areas I feel like I need to develop. You and I have spent a lot of time working on understanding businesses and understanding family business specific, right? And how does that play out over the course of time? So I dove into that particular subject and said, okay, well, I'm going to try to educate myself with as much John Hughes as possible. you know,
Hmm.
so it's development of mind is I think, okay, let's find out where you feel deficient, where you see deficiencies, and let's learn about those. I've worked with guys who have asked for help in their business, and the first thing I ask them is, okay, well, tell me about your business, and they can't tell me the numbers behind the business, where the numbers come from, how the numbers interplay. Well, that's mind work. You gotta understand that. That has nothing to do with your body, has nothing to do with your soul. It's not a spiritual thing. It's, do you understand and have knowledge of that particular thing? So as we look at where the gaps are, that's where you spend time. Um, I think you can look at those four things as the front wheel of a bicycle. And let's say if you were to score each one of them and say, hey, in my body, I've got a six pack. So on a 1 to 10, I'm a 9. Right. But in my mind, I'm not consuming things that are going to move me forward. I'm wasting it with social media. I'm not developing anything. So I'm a 3. And even in the spiritual, hey, I got some guys around me that are amazing, that are pouring into me, that are allowing me to pour into them. My soul relationships are an 8. And then in the spiritual walk, like I'm spending time developing my relationship with God. So you may be a 7.5, 8 there. Well, if you think about where that 3 is, where you're wasting time not developing your mind, and it's the front wheel of a motorcycle, every time that 3 hits, there's a jolt, right? There's this bump in the road. And what'll happen is the faster life gets, the more you're going to be rattled. So it's just going to become this, like you're riding on this, like those jackhammers. So, okay, well, let's look at that space of where you're not developing, and let's develop it out so that that front wheel of your bicycle gets a little smoother over the course of time.
Do
Because
you
you
think
won't,
the front wheel, not the front wheel, do you think the the ridge in the front wheel, if the 3 out of 10 is a ridge, you're saying as light speeds up. So as it hits the ground, the ridge grows. Can that go and is that affect the 9 becomes an 8?
oh, yeah.
The spirit becomes a 6, because of that one ridge in that one piece, if you can
Yeah.
elaborate on that.
Yeah, there's definitely a bleed over. There's a bleed over from all four for sure. So I think that's why you've got to collectively work on all four. But you've got to be able to be honest and measure. I call it taking benchmarks. About every 90 days, look at it and say, where am I when it comes to my physical well being? Where am I when it comes to my soul relationships? Where am I when it comes to my spiritual walk? Where am I when it comes to this idea of developing a mind? Um, and with me, the idea would be that my mind, right, is strong enough that my body doesn't control it, but my spirit does. So I want to become more, I want my mind to become more and more spirit led over time. And how do we do that?
Let's say that the listener is saying this is a bunch of malarkey. What are the consequences for not taking uh for not aligning one's 9? What, in your experience, seeing people's lives, businesses, um, why is it important? Why should anyone care?
Yeah, I think it's just, I, I think we become too busy being who we are to develop into who God created us to be. Like we let things take over. We let um, the busyness of life um, get in the way of us developing into the best that we can be. I have seen multiple guys that have one of those areas, like just one, out of alignment in the beginning. And over the course of busyness, over the course of time, over the course of lack of development, lack of growth, they become out of it. They become they're out of integrity. So they become a different person wherever they are because they're trying to hide that one thing that's missing. And the relationship with their kids goes to crap. The relationship with their spouse goes to crap. Their business acumen and growth goes to crap. It's the foundation's not there. So you're building this foundation on sand, and it just eventually, over the course of time, collapses because there's no attention to those areas. Like it's just a constant reevaluation and growth, reevaluation and growth.
Isn't there something about building in sand and the Sermon on the Mount?
Yeah, yeah. Jesus speaks to that about the foundation of what you're building on.
Why is that so important?
Well, I mean, it's either going to be built on sand or a rock. And I said for me, and this is where I've seen uh, the truth of it for me is the rock of my life is my relationship with my creator. Like that's the rock of it. So everything's built around that rock. My body for years, and Jay, you know this about me. Like I spent a lot of time developing my body to put it on stage for presentation. So this idea of body development was for nothing but aesthetic purposes. And now what I see it is I need to stay and maintain my health because if I get called to go serve, whether that's serving my family, serving my community, serving the business, like I need to be healthy in order to serve. I went to Nicaragua. I've been to India on mission trips, and in those cases, it takes a healthy body to serve well. So the idea of this, I just need to stay pretty and I need to stay healthy, but for what purpose? Well, it's for servitude. How are you going to serve? I mean, right now we're seeing all those floods and craziness that's going on in Texas. Well, there's people there that would probably love to help and they just can't because their body just won't serve because they haven't stewarded it well. But we're called to serve, and I want to maintain my body to serve. When it comes to this soul part of it, I need people in my life that are cheering me on when I win and calling me out when I'm out of alignment. And then again, it goes back to mind. We metabolize what we consume. If all we're consuming is the echo chamber of whatever media you choose to watch, then you're going to start to metabolize that out into every area of your life. It's just a law of nature. So let's change what we're consuming so we can metabolize into somebody different, like with intention. But yeah, you ask what the side effects could be. I'd say the worst side effect that I have seen is just complete collapse.
What can that do to someone?
Oh, it can be catastrophic. I mean, it can be catastrophic to the family. It can be catastrophic I believe it's a catastrophe to the individual. I mean, depression, like there's all kinds of things that can be the end result of it. And I'm not trying to be a doomsdayer, but like you end up going through life without even understanding that there's a purpose and a mission for your life. The ideal end of this, working through it, aligning your nine was developing what is the mission? What is the grand vision for my time here? Who am I serving? How am I serving? What's the legacy I've left behind? What's the impact I've had on my community? What's the impact I've had on my children? How am I serving my spouse well? But it begins with the self-awareness of those four things. How am I stewarding my body? Who's in my life? How am I developing my spiritual walk? And what am I feeding my mind? In my life, what that's led to is, I believe, the first step of true maturity, which is the first step would be self-awareness, right? And then after self-awareness, you kind of grow into this emotional intelligence. Like you can't become emotionally aware without being self-aware. And I believe the ultimate maturity would be spiritual maturity, where you move beyond emotional intelligence and just have a spirit-led life. Like that's, to me, the pinnacle of it all. Yeah. So if someone says, I feel like this is malarkey, I'd say, well, let's examine your life in those areas and tell me how things are going for you. How's it working?
Mm.
How's it working out? Because there's going to be somewhere in their life that there's a pain point. And usually the pain point is the smoke. And then you dive down into one of those four things becomes where the fire is. There's a fire in their mindset or their spiritual walk or who's in their life or how they're stewarding their body.
To someone that's listening, I think this is it, where would I even start? And we haven't even gotten to the other components.
Right.
Body, I'm thinking like, you know, exercise, nutrition, who knows what else, mind, well, my rituals, my habits, things I'm not even cognizant that I do on a daily basis. Spiritual, that seems to be, there's been wars over that one.
Yeah.
Uh, soul, it
Thousands of
sounds like
years.
you're talking about interpersonal relationships.
Yeah.
I could, you know, that could be overwhelming for people. Where would one start? And are you proposing you have some process or formula that
Oh,
you
I
would?
definitely have a process and a formula, and the beginning of that is the benchmarks of where you are currently in those areas, and we can just for a second touch on all of them. You know, we've named the four, which are personal. Those are really deeply personal, right? The spouse and the parent and the worker and the resources steward of resources. That's for the other. Like those involve other people, you know. So if you took a benchmark measurement and just said 1 to 10 on those 8 things, where am I? Where am I in my body? Where am I in my soul? Where am I in my mind? Where am I in my spirit? Like that, taking a good hard look in the mirror and being honest. And then the last one's the circle of genius. Who do you have in your life that's advising? Those are the that's all 9 of them. But it has to begin with, I've got a pain point in my life. Where's the pain point and what's it rooted in? So if you just took those 9 areas and you score them just real simply 1 to 10, use whatever arbitrary number you'd like, 1 to 5, 1 to 10, 1 to 100. And wherever that low mark is, that's where you begin. If it's, hey, I feel like everything's aligned, but my wife and I just are not on the same page. Okay, well, then it's usually boils down to one of two things. It's a mind or spirit. Like it goes one step deeper every time. Yeah, but doing that self-assessment, I call it benchmarking. Just benchmarking those areas and saying, okay, where's my pain point?
What do you mean by worker?
So the worker is, not everybody's an owner of a business. Sometimes we're working inside of someone else's business. That's where we're positioned. Like that's, we can become and show up as a worker in a way that provides value that's way beyond what we quote unquote are paid to provide value to. But the more value you bring, the more resources you gather. But as an entrepreneur, you're still a worker. You're working in and on the business and growing it. So there's a development of that as well. So if the pain point is my business is in bad shape, then that's specifically worker. And then again, steward is the steward of our resources is time, talent, and treasure. Like, how are we stewarding our time? How are we stewarding our talents? Do we even know how we're talented? Do we know how we and should be operating in our talents? And then how am I stewarding the resources of capital in my life? What am I doing with those? How am I deploying those? But yeah, there's definitely a formula to moving those areas to be aligned. Creates true, what I think that's true integrity. I mean, the idea of integrity, right? The root word of integrity is integer, meaning one, right? Well, the alignment of those 9 things means they're all looking for one end result. And what is the end result? And the majority of people can't think beyond next week, much less the end result of their life. Like, what's the legacy of their life? What's the mission of their life? So if you can align all those things to one thing, it's crazy how quickly things can grow and happen.
What fruit would you say that you've seen from this in your own life?
That's a great question, because I actually had somebody point to something a couple of weeks ago, and that was my response. Is that's has nothing to do specifically with me, but the overflow of the growth I've seen in these areas, and it's, I'd say, in my children. Like, I have seen their walk in these areas become something they just expected themselves, because they've seen it in their mother, they've seen it in me. Like, they know the things that we measure, they know the things that we try to improve on, and they've adopted those same processes, and like, to or early 20-year-old kids to a high level and degree of success. Like that, I'd say that's one that I'm the most proud of, is the way my children show up in this world. They um, they steward those areas really, really well, and are already starting to see fruit of it for them. I mean, I'll use Avery as an example, working 2 full-time jobs and developing her own photography business. She booked her first wedding, I'll call it a gig, I don't know what it is, but a wedding contract, within 7 days of really launching her business. And it's because of how she's stewarded that talent for herself really, really well and understands it. Um, but it's a byproduct, I believe, a spillover effect of how I've integrated into my life.
Hmm.
Um, Stephanie and I had the conversation like literally yesterday, and it was about her seeing spillover. She said, Chris, you say all the time that when you get to where there's a solidification of those areas, you begin to see spillover into the other ones. And she goes, and I am beginning to see that. I understand it now. Like, it's not just theory. I've started to put it in place, and now I'm seeing it. So you're like, it's, so I say that's fruit in even other people's life, just by hearing it, not even going through the whole process, but just understanding, hey, there's, once I'm full, there's a spillover into other areas. And with alignment, that spillover just gets crazy. Um, I think the way that our business flows now is a direct spillover of understanding there's areas that I should be operating in because I have talent in that area, and then there's should some areas that I should just keep my hands off of it because I am not equipped to do that. Like, that's not, it's not in my wheelhouse. And I think there's a lot of guys that are running a business that don't even understand the fact there's certain things that they should just keep their hands off of it because it's not their gifting, not their eyes off of it, but their hands off of it. That goes back to that, either one of two things, either the circle of genius or the souls.
What do you mean?
Well, the souls are the ones that are day to day. They're the ones that are aligned with you day to day on a daily basis. And the circle of genius is who's advising you to the next level.
So take me through all 9 again.
The personal ones: body, soul, mind, spirit. Body, soul, mind, spirit. That's the first four that are personal to us. Where it spills over is to spouse. And I say spouse, but the majority of the guys, people I've had conversation with are dudes. So it's a husband and father, right? But spouse and parent, if there's a female on here listening, worker and steward of resources, and then circle of genius. I might have stolen that one from you. I think we've had conversations about that before. So if I stole it, I'm apologizing. But I love the idea that there's a circle of geniuses in my life that are way ahead of me, but want to be aligned with where my life is headed.
Well, I don't think Leonardo da Vinci said, "Good artist copy, great artist steal." But I don't,
Yeah, there,
wouldn't put that on you
yeah, but
for any theft or
yeah,
anything.
there's a book called Steal Like an Artist that actually speaks to the idea of seeing something that speaks to you and then putting your touch on it.
For someone listening that has interest in the constructing their circle of genius, what advice do you have for them?
I think every one of these requires a lot of truthful self-reflection. And I said, the where I feel like people are missing the boat is self-awareness. So it's really a hard process and why it requires someone else, I think, eventually. But I think doing a hard deep dive into what are the areas that you have a lack of knowledge in that your mission needs in it to move forward. Like I know there's things that Suzanne and I are going to do together. There's things that I'm going to do individually. There's things like in the business itself that I don't have mastery in, but I'm going to need a genius in that area to move forward. I am not Chris Kosa and I had this conversation last week. Neither one of us are masters when it comes to marketing, which is why we find people that have mastery in that area to say, okay, how can we market better who we are? Like, so the idea of someone aligning with you that's a genius in an area that you're not a genius in, but do they believe in the mission you're trying to achieve to help move it forward? That's what I mean by alignment. When it comes to financial advisory, like there's lots of holes in understanding every aspect of financial success and financial planning and all that. Then find someone. Um, Having someone that's able to help walk it out is what I mean. I think it's this next level. So over the course of our life, we move into four different chairs, right? And they're in the chair of wisdom, is what I'd say. Because there's a chair of worker, there's a financial chair where you're the one that's putting money towards something. But these particular people would be in the chair of wisdom, like they've reached a point of their life where they have tons of mastery in something and they're willing to impart that wisdom into somebody else.
What do you think work teaches us?
The act of work, like working, when I man, there's a lot in that question. I think I know in my life what work has taught me is where my particular build and makeup shines and where it doesn't. When I think about all the places that I personally have worked, right? We worked in the tobacco field when I was a kid. I am not skilled at physical labor. Like it's like that does not appeal to me. I could probably dig a ditch with the best of them, but I would be completely unsatisfied. Um, I spent time working in a veterinarian's office through high school. And there's areas of that space, because I thought I wanted to be a veterinarian for a short amount of time, that I knew pulled at me in a way that was different than anything else, but not in a way that was enough for me to want to dedicate my life to it. Through college, I worked in the labor space, and I worked for UPS as a box loader of trailers. Like, that is not how I'm built. Doing the work of some of my college classes helped me find passion and things I wanted to dedicate my life to. Like, I've said it before, like, I love the idea and help in trying to understand how businesses function and grow, and taking entrepreneurship classes and doing the work of those projects helped me develop and understand that that's what drives me. That's where I want to operate. So I think for me personally, what work has taught me is where my passions are, so that when I'm operating in those, it feels less like work. It's always going to be work, but the work is a stoking of a fire on its own, rather than having to stoke the fire. That's my personal journey, my personal thought.
What do you mean by time, talent, and treasure?
So how, those are the resources. And again, everything for me is based on my personal walk with God. But God gifts us with time. Everything belongs to him. Every resource is his. And he created us a certain way. I know if I look at how my brain works and where my talents lie, like, that's not something that I did. It's something that was imparted to me. And how am I stewarding those things to bring glory back to God? That's my walk. Okay. For me, how I'm built, and you and I have had this conversation, I think one of the best tools that you can use for this is this Gallup's Clifton's Strength Finder. Like, I understand that my number one strength is futuristic, being able to see beyond. Number two, strategy. Number three is ideation, like understanding the ideas behind things. Activation is one of my strengths. So nothing happens until something happens. How do we get activated? So I think understanding that just those four of my five, how do I operate inside of those and steward those really, really well? If I try to operate in a space that's not using those talents, then I'm not stewarding my talents well. So, and then time, allocation of time, like looking in, one of the most fun exercises I get people to do is an actual audit of their time. Like, every 15 minutes, write down what you've been doing for the last 15 minutes. I had a guy that did this about a month ago, and he found 12 and a half hours that he was really good about calendaring his life. Like, he would allocate time for certain things, but he said he would default to 30 minutes when he could get it done in 10. So he went into his calendar and said, hey, what's the real time this is going to take? And at the end of that exercise, he found 12 and a half hours that he had allocated towards something that he didn't really need to allocate towards that. So now I've got 12 and a half hours I can reallocate to something. So stewarding time and getting it aligned with whatever that mission is.
Are any more important than others?
I think the gut reaction to that question would be yes, because time is the one that's the non-renewable. But I can't say it's more important, because if you allocated your time perfectly, but you misallocated your talents and you misallocated your capital, then the allocation of good allocation of time is still not stewarding the rest. So it's all the resources. So I believe it's each one independently is equally important.
How about in this hierarchy of the nine?
Which ones? I think the ones that are inside of you are the most important, because until they're solidified, there can be no initiative in the others. So the solidification of those four, that base level foundation, is what creates the ability to have initiatives in the other. So the spillover of that foundation. So I always start with those four. There's no reason to work on the relationship with your spouse or the relationship with your children or the failure or success of your business if the person with the pain point is not healthy in those four areas or in alignment in those four areas. So I think it always begins there.
If my mind is on work, I get money for my time based on my talent, how much time I put into the work has a relationship with my skill, which could be more money. My mind is on work. With money, I get sex and I get kids. So I get sex and kids. I could even I'm trying to think for the traditional rat race.
Well, the traditional rat race is we spend our youth preparing for a career, right? Our midlife operating in career, and the end of our life recovering from career. Like that's the traditional way of life. And it's seen to this idea that there's a ceiling of complexity. There's only so much that I can handle. But we miss the fact that the results come from 20% of the activity. Well, if we get really dialed in on what the 20% should be, then the results are amplified. So it's this allocation of all of it, but you've got to like really understand the big picture of it all. But yeah, I mean, like you just said, Jay, like if I operate inside of my talents, if you come into work and all you bring is a skill set, then you're just competent. But if you bring skills and knowledge, then you operate out of excellence. But if you bring skill, knowledge, and your natural talents, then you operate as genius. And the more that we can operate in that space, we're bringing skill, knowledge, and a natural talent. Because we show up differently, we bring more to the table. We provide more value in the workspace, whether it's value as the owner of the operation or value of someone inside the operation. If you're operating with skill, knowledge, and talent, then the result of that in our capitalist society is more resource.
But it seems like the spiritual aspect is very important to your align your nine.
Yes.
And
Where
why
does
is
that?
that?
Well, because I believe that everything should have a kingdom return on the investment. Like if there's an allocation of my resources that are dedicated to what's the kingdom aspect of this? How am I operating in a way that's going to advance the kingdom of God? My life mission is not just mine. It's a co-mission. I'm here in co-mission with God. And I've got to understand that applies to every single aspect. That applies to my resources. That applies to my time. He gave me the talents. So if you talked about which one's the most important out of the four, then absolutely spirit is the most important.
It seems like people that care about that would want to participate in what you're doing.
I believe I um if it was the perfect avatar of someone to work with me, like it's going to be someone who is a believer. Like I I think that's where some of the pain point actually originates from, is knowing there's inside of us a deeper purpose and mission and not having a way to understand how to achieve that. I think it causes this a sense of unfulfillment, an emptiness. And I believe that that's, we talk about the spillover effect. That emptiness and that lack of fulfillment spills over into other areas. It makes us show up as a bad boss when we're unfulfilled. It makes us show up as a bad dad when we're unfulfilled. But I think if we can say, hey, God put us here with purpose, with calling, let's discover that and figure out a way to implement that into every single area, and like operate in integrity. It's every area. I mean, you've been around me at work enough to know I don't hide how I operate and where my value systems lie. Like I don't hide it under a bush. Like it's front and center in almost every conversation. Not that I try to bring it back to that, but I can see where the lack of integrity lies when having conversations with people. It usually boils down to they don't understand what they're called to do here. So yes, the spiritual aspect to me is the most important. And I think the ones that decide to say yes to this will be, for sure, that would be a big, big, big part of their life. It'll be a big part now, and afterwards, it'll be the most important part of their life.
What would, I guess, there's this thought that is, I can't quite grasp it. I mean, that we'll have to come back and keep going through but this piece here is that, yeah, what's the highest aim, or what are we, for those that are like, for someone that doesn't, I guess,
So I might be able to help with that. Like you're saying, you have a hard time grasping it. Like I understand my mission here. Okay. And running the car dealership is just part of the job. It's part of my daily activities. Leading my family is part of my daily activities. But my mission here, my co-mission is to create disciples of men and lead them into being better leaders wherever they place their feet. That's my mission. The second mission in that, because I do have one with my wife. I've got one individually and I have one with my wife. That Suzanne and I can work with couples in a way that has an impact on the divorce rate. Like that's a big, big goal. Like understanding that when we work with couples, it has an impact on divorce rate. Well, how can just two people, right, in rural North Carolina have an impact on divorce rate? And I'll give you an example. She and I worked with a couple for around a year who were in a really, really, really bad place. And we spent about an hour with them every 2 weeks. That's all it was, but they were willing to do the work. They were willing to put in the time and effort to fix whatever this was that was going on. And it's still rooted in the same area. It's still rooted in how are you stewarding these areas? And a year later, they're working with their church. Their church is now developing a group style marriage ministry, marriage like this, like they're doing it as a group. And this couple is now going through it, not as a student to just go through the process, but as a student to teach it. So once the church puts it in place, they will be teaching other couples this. So Suzanne and I work with one couple who will now be working with 20 to 40 couples at a time. So the ripple effect of that, I don't know that we'll ever see. But if enough of that happens, there's definitely an effect on the divorce rate. I mean, there's just simple things that she and I have learned through our 29 years as a married couple that work for us and don't work for us, or send us backwards. Work for us or send us backwards. Like that's really the only two options. Um, and the idea that you can help someone learn one statistic, the divorce rate in America is around 50%. The divorce rate in America with couples who pray with one another is 1 in 1,056. Like, that's a pretty substantial thing to be taught. Pray with your wife. And you have that much of an effect on whether you're going to make it or not as a married couple. The church that developed that curriculum that this couple is going to be teaching, the reason they developed the curriculum was they asked the parishioners of the church, if you were sitting in front of God and had one question, what would your question be? And the number one question that people had was, is my marriage going to make it? Number two was, what's my purpose? So people in marriages are more concerned about the health and the sustainability of their marriage than they are even about their own personal purpose. Well, if we can just sit in front of one couple and say, hey, have you prayed with your wife today? Because here's the effect of just that. If you don't do anything but that, here's the effect of that. I don't know how that ripple. I don't know that I'll ever be able to see it or understand it. But having that one couple be an example of what it could be to me, like I know that's how we're created. And neither one of those has anything to do with the car business specifically. But in this space, if I'm working with young men or men as a whole and showing up with integrity in these 9 areas of my life, then the spillover effect will be, hey, teach me how to do that. Because I've had that. I've had that question. Hey, show me how to do that. And it's just about helping them be a better leader of themselves wherever they put their feet, whether they put their feet here at work or whether their feet are at church or whether their feet's in the community, serving in the community, however they're serving, wherever their feet are. Like, just be a leader there, and be a leader by having these 9 things aligned in your life. That's my mission. And at the end of working through this, you'll have one too.
If you're listening to this, share this with somebody you care about. Listen to it a couple times. Follow Chris on Instagram. What's your Instagram?
Chris Vester 9. Imagine that.
I challenge you to go listen to some of our other episodes, or all of our other episodes, actually, on the Culture Matters podcast. Chris, thanks for introducing this to our show, and I look forward to next time. Got more questions.
Awesome. Thank you.
Please leave us a review on the Culture Matters podcast, and we will see you next time.